This is the solutions video to your direct variation homework for the first day that you had this worksheet. So for tonight, you guys only had to do the evens. Okay, so looking for questions 2 and 4, this section was asking us to determine whether it was direct or not. And if it was, we needed to write an equation. So remember, if it is direct, we are always going to divide and get a constant of variation. So if it's direct for number 2, when I do -3/12, that's right here, or anytime I do c divided by n, I should always get the same thing. My k, my constant of variation. So if I do -3/12, does that give me the same thing as if I do -2/8? And in fact, it is. All right, this is equal to -1/4, this is equal to -1/4, and this is equal to -1/4. All right, so all three of these are equal, and we always get the same thing. So every time we do c over n, we get -1/4. So yes, this is direct, and my equation is c over n is equal to -1/4. If you wrote -0.25, that's okay too. So the same thing for 4. We need to see if this is going to give us the same constant. If r divided by t is going to give us some k. I'm going to erase this just so I have some more room. And I want you guys to show all this, so if you need to go on scrap paper, go ahead. So for number 4, I'm checking to see if r over t is equal to some k. Well, if I test this, I get 2 over 50. And if I reduce that, that's equal to 1 over 25. Well, here I have 4 over 25. And those two are definitely not equal. So this is not a direct variation. Because when I divide 2 divided by 50, I do not get the same thing as 4 divided by 25. Okay, so this is not a direct variation. So there's no equation to write. Okay, but for up here, I had c over n was equal to -1/4. For number 6 and 8, they're straight up telling us that it is direct. So we know for a fact that when I divide y over x, I should get my k, my constant of variation. So for 6, I'm looking for 2 values. I'm looking up here, and I'm going to call that a, just because I think a's are easier to work with than question marks. And I'll call this one b, because I have 2 different things to find. Now, remember, since I know that this is direct, I know that when I do 7 over 2, that should give me the same constant of variation as if I did a over 8. And then I can cross multiply and find a. And I'll do the same thing for b. I know that 7 over 2 should give me the same thing as if I did 54 divided by b. Okay, I'm not going to finish this one because I did it in class today, but that's how you set that up. And we're going to do the same thing for 8. Okay, I'll do this one in red. Okay, I'll call this, I won't use A and B since that's what I used up there. How about I use E and F? Okay, they told me that it was direct. All right, they told me that this ratio was constant. So I know that when I do -8 over 2, that should be equal to when I do E divided by 4. And then you can cross multiply. Don't forget this negative sign. You get -32 is equal to 2e. So -16 is equal to e. So that's what goes up here. And then we can do it again for f. Okay, I know that when I do -8 over 2, that should give me the same thing as when I do 20 over f. Cross multiply. So you get f is equal to -5. That is a horrible, horrible f. Boop. All right, that's it. If you read the instructions for questions 9 through 11, it says represent each of the following relationships graphically using the reals as the domain. All this means is that graph this where real numbers exist. So graph it on a normal graph paper. Okay, and you guys only had to do 10. Now, remember, in order to graph something, it has to be y equals. And in the case of number 10, it is not y equals. So I need to multiply both sides by x to get y by itself. So we got y equals negative 4x. So you guys do need to have a piece of graph paper or something with that graphed on it, okay? And you should make sure that you use a straight edge because y equals negative 4x, this is just a line. And specifically, we know that it's a line with an intercept of 0 because there's no plus b on it, and it has a slope of negative 4. Okay? And question 10 is going to help us answer question 12. Okay? Because question 12 is asking about the graph of this direct variation, which is really any direct variation, where it's y divided by x, okay? So they did exactly what we did in 10. They multiplied by x to get y by itself. Okay? And if you look at this, okay, this is also a line. All right? This is a line that also has an intercept of 0 because there's no plus b on the end. Okay? So it goes through the origin, and it has a slope of k. So in general, all of our direct variations will always be a line, or they will always be linear. Okay? And even more than that, all right, kind of taking this answer a step further, not only is it always going to be a line, but it's always going to be a line that goes through the origin. Okay, because if I'm always of the form y over x is equal to k, I'm always going to have to multiply by x. I'm always going to have a slope of k, and I'm always going to not have an intercept. Okay, because if you think of lines, y equals mx plus b, none of these equations have a plus b on the end. Okay, so my intercept is always 0. I'm always going through the origin. Okay, now let's look at the word problems. These are super easy. Okay, we're writing it, write an equation or formula that expresses the relationship using k as our constant, k for constant. So the circumference c varies directly as d. So c directly d, c divided by d. And then that has to equal my constant k. That's it. That's all you got to do. On to 16. Area varies directly. Now be careful, the square of the radius. So area varies directly. The square of the radius is r squared. Okay, don't forget the square part. But remember, directly means divide. Now we can do 18. The area varies directly. Here's another one. The square of its edge. So a over e squared is equal to k. 20. The weight is directly proportional. Remember, directly proportional means the same thing as varies directly. So the weight is directly proportional to the length. So W divided by L equals K. Weight, direct, length. 20. The surface area of the sphere S varies directly as the square of the radius. So the surface area varies directly as the square of the radius. And 24, the side of a regular polygon, S, varies directly as the square root of the area. Okay, square root is not the same thing as square. So the side varies directly as the square root of the area. Okay, it really is that easy, guys. For 26, again, it wants us to represent this graphically. So you're just going to graph this right here. All right, and remember, to graph, we need to get y by itself, so we can multiply both sides by x squared. Okay, and this is just saying, we haven't really talked about domain and range yet. We're actually going to do that next class. But this is just saying, I only want you to graph it on x's between -2 and 2. So when you're on your graph paper, here's 1, here's 2, -1, -2. I only want your graph to be between -2 and 2. Don't go past that. Okay? Now, just like the last graphing question, 27 is an odd, so you didn't have to do this one. But if we look at this, it says the graph of a direct square variation, which looks like this, just like number 26, is always what? Well, hopefully you all see that y equals something squared. That's a quadratic. All right, if k is positive, it'll be smiley. If k is negative, it'll be frowny. But it's always going to be a quadratic, and it's always going to be a quadratic that goes through the origin. Okay? And are quadratics always a function? The answer is yes, because it passes the vertical line test, which I'm pretty sure you guys learned about before. I'll be lazy. VLT, vertical line test. So if you graph a quadratic and you draw a vertical line through it, that vertical line only hits it once. So it only hits it once, so it's a function. How am I doing on time? Pretty good. 30, because we did not have to do the odds, only the evens. So let's see. Solve for the value. So now we're not just writing the equation, we're solving something. C varies directly as R. So I know that C over R is equal to K. Okay? And I know that, I'll do this in a different color. When C is equal to 6.28, and that's when R is equal to 1. I want to find R when C is equal to 25.12. So I can go ahead and cross multiply. Remember, direct, divide, we set up our proportions. Divide both sides by 6.28. And I get R is equal to... Let me turn my calculator on. 4. So R is equal to 4. Bueno, bueno. On to the next one. 32. D varies directly as T. So D directly as T. And when D is 30, when T is 1/2, I want to find T when D is 20. Cross multiply. I have 30T is equal to 20 times 1/2 is 10. So T is equal to 10 over 30, which is 1/3. Okay, notice it's really hard to squish all this work in here, so I hope you guys are going onto separate paper. Y varies directly as X. So I've got Y varies directly as X. Y is 8 when X is 4. Find y when x is negative 50. Whew. Cross multiply. 8 times negative 50, that would be negative 400 equals 4y. So negative 100 equals y. 36. Now this one doesn't actually have the word direct in it, but let's think about it. 3 men earn $1,800 in a week. So 3 men make $1,800. What will 15 men make? Okay, so think about it this way. I've got men and I've got pay. Go ahead, cross multiply. 3x equals, what is 1,800 times 15? 27,000. Divide that by 3. You get 9,000. Okay, and I know this one doesn't have the word direct in it, but if you think about it, it says that they're working at the same rate. So if it's the same rate, they have the same constant, so the same k, which would mean that they were direct. Okay, and let's do 38. I think I can squeeze that in somewhere. The surface area varies directly as the square of the radius. So surface area varies directly as the square of the radius. If the surface area is 64 pi, when the radius is 4, now be careful, this is 4 squared going in the bottom. What is the surface area when the radius is 8? That's an 8 squared going in the bottom because it's r squared. So let me move it down a little bit. Okay, before I cross multiply, I'm going to actually write this as 16, and I'm going to write this as, 64. I almost wrote 8 squared again. Now I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply. 64 times 64, I do not know that. 4,096 pi equals 16s. Notice, I only did 64 times 64. I didn't multiply by pi. Why? Okay, nowhere in this question does it tell me to round. All right, and I know that pi is an irrational number. So if you hit that pi in your calculator, you're going to have to round at some point. And since it doesn't tell you how to round, you don't round. Okay, we want an exact answer, so leave the pi in there. Now, we can divide both sides by 16. Now, I still want the pi there, but I can definitely simplify these. For starters, they're both definitely divisible by 2. Put it in your calculator, you get 256. So that is your final answer. And boom, done.